Welcome to episode 106 of the Nero Show. In today's episode,
I give an in-depth review of the Enve Melee. How does it ride?
massive Gran Fondo cancellation causes an absolute stink. We go into depth.
UCI Continental Team St. Perrin were caught riding Chinese frames with fake UCI-approved stickers. Quite a funny story.
And if you get dropped from a brand's activation ride, is it the brand's fault? All right, let's get into it. Right, the white shirts are back on. Summer is around the corner, Jesse Coyle. You've been riding a new rig for a couple of days or a week or so. Should we start there?
I'm desperate to do this. I think calling it a first look is a bit underselling it. I'm calling this a review.
This is a deep dive.
I've only ridden it 3 times, but I've really tried to get what I can out of it. And so for those that aren't following along, last week I was chatting through this Enve Melee bike that I was frothing on. Turns out the person that owns it lives locally, is going away, let me ride it. So I've been on it all the past week, putting it through its paces, and I'm going to give my Enve Melee thoughts, review, chat through it top to bottom as basically the first high-level, top-spec road disc bike that I've ever ridden.
I'm really hyped about this. Not so much about to hear your take on the bike, but I've seen some of your metrics, your chat on this. I think you're good at this. I don't want to sell you too high this early on, but I reckon there's a bike reviewer deep underneath that facade.
Dave Arthur in here somewhere.
Look, hiding away in there.
Can I preface this by saying this isn't going to be a 10-minute blurt it out at you and we move on. So this isn't TikTok. I'm going to step through it nice and slowly and try and cover everything. We're going to have the value chat. We're going to have the how does it compare to the China chat. We'll get there, don't worry. But we're going to have a little dance along the way. So just relax.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Transparency, what rides have I actually done on it? Have I just ridden it around the block? No. So I've done 3 rides on it. The first one was a race pace, chop off at speed, rolling turns for an hour.
The fastest ever, Jesse Coyle.
Officially. I went out, I put the pedals on it, got the fit right, went out, and we did the fastest ever Centennial Park chop in the history of
Strava.
the chop being recorded.
Yep.
49.3 on my Wahoo, average speed. So, yeah, rolling turns, had a sprint at the end. How is it in a race? Got a feel for it there. Other rides I did. I went out the next day and did this East Hills loop in Sydney, Watson's Bay, Bondi Beach. Beautiful ride. Don't do it that often. So short climbs, 2 to 4 minutes. Standout thing about that ride is 2 things. Lots of descents, short, sharp descents, and also it's very rough. Lots of concrete, so pothole. So that was really testing. So the descending, but mainly how does it go over rough terrain, mixed terrain. So I did that on the Tavello on a Wednesday. And next day, Thursday, exact same route on the Enve. So I could test back-to-back, how's the comfort go. And then the last ride I did was just a regular 1 hour in Centennial Park, sort of tempo ride, just getting a feel for it on the most regular ride I do. And those were the 3 rides.
If you're watching on YouTube, you will have seen a bit of B-roll of the chop and of that road surface that Jesse is talking about, which I think you're dead right. Like that East Hills loop is a super indicator of a lot of the comfort compliant stuff, because when he says it's concrete, it's slabs of concrete laid next to each other that are therefore have gaps in them. So I think it's a super test.
Yeah. Final other disclaimer, it is slightly too small for me. So it's a size 56. I feel like they are very conservative on the sizing. I usually can fit a 56 pretty well. I would not buy this. That's not my size. I did a 58. So it had a 120mm stem. I would probably need a 140. So it is a bit too small, but it's saddle height I was able to get right. But that may impact how it's riding. I will go into all the specifics. I just want to say, first off, high level, what is this bike? Because I think this is where it's caught us up before. If I was going to describe this bike to you, the first word I would say is it's a race bike. And then I will continue that on. But first and foremost, this is a race bike. I didn't get any vibes that this was an endurance bike or sort of a wider tire clearance, more comfortable bike you can race on.
No all road?
No
Okay.
all road. This is a race bike with more compliance and a more livable geometry. That's how I would describe it in one sentence. It feels very lively. It does feel very stiff. It accelerates well. For all those reasons, first impression on that doing the chop was, okay, this is a race bike. And that was the first thing I was trying to figure out, well, what is this bike? So yeah, I'll carry into some more specifics, and I'm going to start with the negative things first. Positives, negatives, how to go. I'm going to leave price for us. I'm just going to review this as a standalone bike to begin with. First thing I noticed at the chop, rolling at higher speeds, was it did feel more labored than I was used to. So coming through for my turn, rolling over riders that I'm used to riding with, I usually know the effort I need to put through. It didn't feel like at those higher speeds I was rolling through as easy. It did feel more labored. I'm going to go through some of the features of the frame and compare it aerodynamically in a sec. But that was the first thing I noticed. Part of the reason as well for that might be because the person that owns the bike put 32mm tires front and rear. And on that front rim, that 32, even though it is a pretty wide internal, it's definitely mushrooming over. That rim is not designed aerodynamically to support a 32mm tire. It was measuring 34. And so I'd be running a 28 or a 30 on that from an aerodynamic point of view. The rest of the things I'm feeling speed-wise, I think are due to the frame design. I don't think it is totally optimized aerodynamically. Second negative, and this is just related to how the person built the bike, is I really didn't like the gearing. So it had a 52-36, I think, chain rings, which is okay, but it has a 10-36 cassette. Now that might be good going and doing a climbing route, but when you're racing, I was in between gears, cadence was too low, then the cadence was too high. I found it really irritating. So, I mean, you run a 34 cassette. I run a 30 on my road bike. That was more of a thing I was going.
I run a 34 on a Shimano gearing with a different front chainring.
With a bigger front chainring.
Bigger front chainring.
Okay.
I don't want to speak out of turn yet, but about 6 months ago when I was talking about the TCR, because when I was on that exact gearing, I would describe being in the heavier gears at the chop on the TCR around that 10 tooth as it was very labored. It was a clunk because the gear shifts are I agree, they're too big in those big gears. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's no fault of the frame, and maybe the person that owns the bike just prefers it like that. That was more a moment for me where, like these bigger cassettes aren't very good for racing. You can't get your cadence right. It's frustrating. It's very annoying. Steering on the Enve Melee, the cornering. This is also an interesting one because it's touted as handling very well in whatever regard that means from the people that said it was fun to ride and handles well. For me, I found that it required a lot more input going around corners. And I noticed initially and you might have video of this, every time at the chop when we're coming up the hill and turning right around the corner, I was putting in my usual input of the steering. And I was kind of getting spat out the exit of the corner. I was really struggling to get it around the corner using my normal steering input. And so that's potentially something people might think is a positive in that it's more stable. I'm used to the more twitchy, lower input steering. And at least compared to my Tavello, it requires more active cornering. And personally, it's not something I prefer. Aerodynamics. And I'm going to compare this side by side with the Tavello. Now, I've got a link in here. This is the Canva link that's in the notes, Chris. It has a video in it. So at the start of this video, I've taken photos, and apologies, the most unprofessional photos because I just took them on my balcony yesterday afternoon. And so I've put from the same angle the Enve Melee and the Tavello Arrow side by side. Now, I'm comparing to the Tavello because it's the only other road bike I've ridden, and it has that sort of more modern aero tweaked geometry. Substitute, this isn't at Tavello ad, substitute in any other SL8 style, SL7 style bike, and we can kind of do this comparison. But so this first image, a couple of things stand out to me. Firstly, it's getting the stack height through the head tube. It is a taller head tube. Whereas if you can see on the Tavello, more of the stack height is coming from the spaces I've got. And the head tube on the Enve is just wider, especially at the top bearing and the bottom bearing. Frontal area, there is just more of it.
That's interesting.
That's the first thing I noticed. Forks, from the frontal area point of view, kind of similar. And so that's the comparison from the front.
It's more shaped though. It's more of the factor hourglass figure type thing, isn't it?
It is. The reason that's confusing is that, so I actually got the calipers out. The inner measurement at the narrowest point on the Enve is the same as the Tavello, but the Tavello is that width the whole way up and down.
Interesting.
And so it's basically, at the narrowest point it's the same, but the rest in the top of the bottom is wider.
You can really see what you're saying about the tyres in that image.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep. And so the tyres there, that measured width there. So on the left, the Enve is a 34 measured width. On that Tavello, that's a 30 mil front. On the CRW wheel, it's a 31. It's a 3 millimeter wider tyre. If you scroll over, we can probably scroll back and forth between the images. So there's side on, we've got the Tavello, and then lined up in basically the exact same spot is the Enve. A couple of things stand out. Look at the depth of the head tube and the down tube and the fork from the side. Like how much are you seeing? Obviously from the front, you don't want to see much. From the side, you kind of want to see more, especially in the front end. So I've got some measurements here. The head tube depth is 88 mils on the Tavello. It's only 65 on the Enve. So you've got about 2 centimeters more depth at the head tube. The fork depth as measured in the middle of the spoke, because obviously it tapers inwards as you go down. So at the same spot, 45.5 on the Tavello, 36 mil on the Enve. So the fork is also about a centimeter, not as deep. And you've also then got the other standout thing is this big sloping top tube on the Enve. And now that does a lot for compliance, which I'm going to get into in the positives, but just from an aerodynamic point of view, when you see all the track bikes, they all have horizontal top tubes because from the front, from the side, you're like, this probably doesn't make a difference aerodynamically, but it's not, because if it's on an angle, all that tube as it goes down is hitting the wind. Whereas if it's horizontal from the front, the frontal area is less. And so I think that's probably, none of these things are major, but there might be at 55k an hour going down the hill at Centennial Park, a watt here and a watt there starts to add up. And then if you scroll over one more, I've taken a shot of the down tube, which is where there's probably the biggest difference. So the down tube on the Enve here is almost like a rectangle sort of box section. And then if you go over one more, you'll see the down tube of the Tavello is like a time trial bike. It is, I've got the measurements here. The down tube measured just above the boulder cage is 44.8 wide. So the width from the frontal area on the Tavello, and it's way wider on the Enve, 52.9. So it's not only is it deeper on the Tavello, it's also narrower. And so just from an aerodynamic point of view, obviously at that point, the wind has come off the rear wheel and it's probably already turbulent. Not that I'm an aero expert, I'm butchering terms from other people, but as you move down the bike, the wind is more turbulent, so it's not as important, but slap an aero bottle on there and you can kind of see like there's probably a couple watts there. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is just purely aerodynamically. In terms of assessing the bike, I think you are giving up some aero drag for the positives, which there are quite a few, and which I'll get onto.
The head tube depth was the first thing I noticed when we were looking at it here last week, and that's dramatically different. I kind of feel like there has to be something in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm doing this as well is because there's no aero testing on either of these bikes. It's not Tour Magazine tested. This is what you do. You pixel peep the tube shapes. That's as best as we got.
Yep.
Weight. What does it weigh? It's 7.5 kilos with pedals. That's with the new SRAM red. That's with carbon spoked, the Caish wheels, which are I think 1,200 grams and something. So good wheels. 7.5 with pedals, which is probably 7.2, 7.25 without pedals, with 50 mil deep wheels. For reference, the Tavello that we've been showing is the exact same weight. Bang on the exact same. Both of them have a power meter, and the Tavello has that really deep CRW rear wheel, which is like 2.5 centimeters deeper. So that's the weight. And as you can tell, I did put that in the negative column. It's not really, like, you could argue, is that negative? I wouldn't say that weight's a positive for the package.
It's right on the threshold. I think Cam Nichols referenced this in one of his videos recently, where it's 7.5 for him is the threshold of over that I can feel weight.
Interesting.
And I actually agree with him on that. But the thing is that the Enve is spec'd higher. So if you spec'd the Tavello with red, you're probably going to shave 200 or 300 grams off it. So yeah, I'd agree. That's in the negative column.
Okay. This is what I want to get onto as well. So we're through that. Positives. This is where I'm excited. It is a very nice bike. I had a lot of fun riding it. So the first thing, as I said, the reason why I say it is a race bike plus is the reason why it is a race bike is because you get out of the saddle, you accelerate. It has all the hallmarks of a race bike. It feels very lively. It accelerates well. Sprinting on it. I won the sprint at the chop. There you go. Humble brag. Or not so humble brag. Put insert footage here, please, Chris.
Well, I was second, so you can
Just a second?
you can actually see me. I'll be able to see you. Put it that way.
I was just sitting on about 1,200 watts. I wasn't like 1,600 watts, but feels really nice to accelerate, to sprint. And that's kind of the first thing you would assess is this a race bike? Does it have the stiffness? And absolutely it does. So the first thing you said to me when I saw you was like, oh no, I see why Eternal Energies ride this bike. Yep. Its position in the pro peloton is 100% valid. Yes. And I think one of the other things I'm going to do in this review is we're going to go through the website and the description and see if it's, if I agree with what they claim the bike is doing instead of assuming what, I think we got that wrong in the past. This is a race bike.
Mm-hmm. We did get that wrong in the past.
Yes. Next thing, it is noticeably more comfortable than the Tavello. Front and rear, but not in the vibration absorption. So, if for the season Nero Show listeners, I mentioned when I talked about the Tavello compared to my TCR, is that in the little section of Centennial Park where it's not hot mix and it's chip seal, I noticed how much vibration dampening the Tavello had compared to the giant TCR rim brake on that certain section. So riding over that section on the Enve felt about the same. It's not doing anything in the vibration dampening, the buzz kind of thing. But the big hits, the cracks in the concrete, the potholes, the speed bumps coming onto a bike path, all of that, it really absorbs to the point where I was just bracing less. Like even on the Tavello, when you hit those bumps, you'd sort of go, oh, okay, I'm gonna hit that now, and douche, you'd hit it. And this does a really good job at smoothing those out, but not just through the bum. The handlebars too, like you hit, because obviously you go over, a bump, you hits the handlebars first. I was noticing now, I was like, oh, like it's not jarring through my hands. So they've done a really good job in designing the frame in a way that absorbs that. And it's really is significantly noticeable, 100%.
Do I get to replay the bit of me last week when you said, what do you think my feelings of this bike are going to be? And I think I pretty much said that.
Yep.
You'll be bracing for that bit that you always know, and it won't quite feel the same.
Exactly.
But that's interesting. Yeah, I mean...
Now, I put in an effort to put the tires at about the same pressure. And so the wheels are basically a fairly similar carbon spoke, carbon rim. They've done a really nice job in doing that. What I will add,
it's the layup. It's the layup.
No. And so this is what I want to. This is what I want to get into, because this is the difference between what you sort of said last week and what I'm feeling. So it is definitely more comfortable, but I can see where that's coming from. I mean, bring up the photo again from the side. It's got this sloping top tube, so you've got this gigantic seat post sticking out. It has a thinner seat post, so it's not the seat post isn't as deep. Now, a thinner seat post is going to be able to flex more, and so I didn't get the sense that Enve had some different magic Enve carbon that they were doing that got this compliance. I feel like were really smart in how they designed the bike, which is getting you there, but comes with downsides in that the weight's not crazy, and aerodynamically, I don't think it's as good as a Tavello. And so it's a different bike, not necessarily a better bike. If this bike rode like this and looked like a Canyonair rode, I would be wetting myself. Like, how is it possible to be that comfortable and still be a full-on aero bike? That would be, I'm selling, giving away the Tavello, and I'm getting it, right? Whereas it's not quite that. It's just a design process to achieve that, which I can feel. I just wanted to say that because I think it is different.
Sure, it's not the way up.
I'm pretty sure it's not the way
up. You're dead right there. Just looking anecdotally at that side-on shot again of the Melee, the geometry, the look of that frame is more similar to my Aspero than it is your Tavello. Like the big sloping, yeah. I mean, it's once you point it out, it's hard to miss it.
Oh, I've got so many things. I'm so excited. This is so good. Okay. I want to move on to some of the group set chat now. So new SRAM Red compared to Ultegra 12-speed, which is what I've got. I'm going to start with the positives on this. The new SRAM Red brakes are insane. I was at you know that ride I did East Hills on the Thursday? I was with a couple of mates, a couple of boys. Dogma, brand new Dura Ace 12-speed. He's had it about 3 weeks. Side by side, I'm squeezing the brakes. The new SRAM Red brakes make the Shimano Dura Ace 12-speed brakes feel kind of stiff and kind of outdated. It is mind-blowing how smooth that lever feel is on the new SRAM Red. It almost feels like the wind could blow and it would engage the brake. It is so incredibly soft and modulates well. I know you said that, but I have to just say, I have to overemphasize it. And it's not really until you squeeze them side by side that you go, oh, like this Shimano one feels cheap. It really does.
Yep, they've nailed it. Something about horizontal fluid chambers or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a reason. People know what it is. But when you're riding your bike, it's legit.
Yeah. And it's not one of those things where you just got to squeeze it and you go, oh, it's better, but it doesn't really impact my ride experience. Like, it is really fun braking on the new SRAM Red. I really, really enjoyed it. Second thing, which I actually haven't heard mentioned before, chain slap. So
I heard you'd mention it.
I'm not going to mention it. I'm going to let the video evidence first. So if you go back to that Canva link, I've put the video in there. This is me picking up the Enve with the saddle height to my belly button and just dropping it. And I want you to look at the rear derailleur cage. Don't look at the chain, look at the rear derailleur cage as you play that through. So for those that are just listening, I'm dropping the Enve, the rear derailleur cage on the SRAM Red barely moves. The Shimano one goes dunk, 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 dunk. And then if you keep playing, Chris, just to demonstrate as well, I got down and pulled the rear derailleur cage towards the chain rings and let it go. And again, no bounce on the SRAM Red one because it's got that fluid dampener thing. And then it's almost hilarious. If you look at the Shimano one, it is literally it's bouncing all over the place. The difference that makes on the road is huge. The first ride, I got on it. I went down my street, over a few speed bumps, off a curb, and onto the bike path in Redfern. And I was like, "What? Where's the sound? This bike's making no sound." Went back on the Tavello the next day, and I'm like, "Is something loose? Is something broken? Like, what is going on?" And no, the Tavello is built well. There's nothing loose. It's just that chain with that rear derailleur on the Shimano is just a spring, and it bounces around. The SRAM one, the way that dampener works is significant to me. I asked you, do you feel like do you get sound on your Shimano grip set? You didn't really notice a difference. For me, it was significantly quieter.
But you know what the trade-off of that is?
What's that?
Well, smoother shifting on the Shimano.
Yep.
I mean, that's
potentially
where this ends.
Yes.
No, I don't think that's potentially. I think I'm pretty sure that's a fact because you've got less tension on the chain.
True.
And so it's a lighter shift.
Yep.
And my complaint of the SRAM shift, if you want to go into it, is, well, I'll let you.
I'll get there because I did have the negatives.
You're having this moment. I'll just let you continue to have your moment.
Okay. I just wanted to mention that it was I was getting back onto the Shimano now, and I was like, oh, I wish it was quieter. Like, this feels cheap. Again, it feels cheap compared to the SRAM. The brakes don't feel as smooth, and the derailleur bounces around. Now, Shimano
Heavily
could do
disagree.
this because GRX has you can engage the dampener. And so I personally think I really want this.
Okay.
Yep.
Heavily disagree.
Okay.
But go on.
And the final thing, just which we've said a million times, I won't spend too much time, is just the battery system on SRAM is just far superior with removable batteries you charge. Okay. And just on the group sets, the negatives of the new SRAM Red, the rear shifting isn't as fast or direct. It's just slower. Personally, it didn't really bother me. I definitely got back on Shimano and was like, oh, yeah, that's faster. For me, it wasn't like the brakes and it wasn't like the dampener on the rear derailleur where it really improved my ride experience. I think I would just get used to the slower shifting. It didn't really bother me. Maybe you disagree.
I don't disagree with you that it doesn't bother me in the sense I have the same thing that I do. The first couple of shifts when I jump back on the S5, which has the Shimano on it, I just go, whoa, what the hell? I barely press the button. Does that affect my overall ride experience? Only in the one circumstance when I'm particularly in say an effort, like a threshold type effort, and I'm running out of legs and I shift down a gear to make it easier on myself. I find from a pure performance perspective that Shimano shift is easier on my fatiguing legs than the clunk of the SRAM shift. That's the only time I can ever convince myself that there is a performance difference to it. Other than that, I'm in complete agreement with you.
Okay, cool. I miss the sprint shifters that I have on Shimano. I know SRAM you can do the blip things, but they're a bit clunky and big, and the sprint shifters are really nice. The D-fly button things on SRAM, the ones on the inside, are in an awkward position. I found them quite hard to press.
Oh, I disagree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I
heavily disagree with you.
Okay.
I find the inside ones vastly superior on SRAM.
Okay.
Actually.
Okay.
Interesting.
And I find the Shimano levers just more comfortable. They're still a bit narrower than the SRAM ones, and they just fit my hands better. Yeah, just want to mention. And I don't like the button feel as much as Shimano. So the lever paddle sweeps backwards on the SRAM, which means when you're holding it to actually shift, I have to move my finger back to get to the button, whereas my finger kind of sits on the button on Shimano. So I kind of would, yeah, I'd pick the Shimano levers. I could put Shimano levers with the SRAM rest of the group set. I would do that. So that's just some random thoughts on SRAM Red versus Shimano. If I was building a new bike today.
So if you were building a new bike today, custom Jesse Coyle build, what would you choose? Money is not necessarily an object.
Given the fact that I still race, I'd pick Shimano just for the sprint shifters. And the speed of the shifting in certain extreme scenarios, I think is better. So just for those two reasons. If for every other reason, I pick SRAM Red. I think for 9 out of 10 people, the new SRAM Red's a better group set.
I think you'd also have to really consider your gearing. I don't know if the perfect gearing exists for you in SRAM. Maybe it's the 54 with the 1033, maybe. But
I wouldn't be going bigger than a 1033.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
what I mean.
Yeah, I'd be going
already
probably their smallest cassette, whatever that is.
Anyway, that's just one to think about.
Yeah, that was just that was just my thoughts on this SRAM. I hadn't heard anyone really talk about that chain slap thing. And yeah, the video is pretty damning. When I went and filmed it, I thought, oh, that's doesn't look good for Shimano. Carry on. So overall, if I had to sort of wrap it up, the Enve is very comfortable with a smooth feel in the hands and the bum. It's not just compliant in the rear. The quieter drivetrain with less chain slap was really nice. I really love the lighter brake feel. And the cornering, which is more stable, personally wasn't for me, but I'll lay this out as a positive. It gives you a very enjoyable, low stress, quiet ride feel without feeling like you're on an endurance bike. That's, to me, is the Enve Melee. So if I had to one line describe it, Cervelo S5 is an aero bike that's surprisingly comfortable. The Tavelo Aero is a race bike with aero tweaks at a reasonable weight. The Giant TCR rim brake is an agile climbing bike with responsive handling. And so the Enve Melee is a race bike with more compliance and livable geometry. That's what I would say. Because and just to reiterate, if I'd started that Enve Melee description off and said, it's a compliant bike with livable geometry that you can race on, it would give you the wrong impression. It's a race bike.
So that's the Jesse Coyle sales pitch.
Yep.
How does that marry with what Enve are telling us?
That's what I wanted to do, because that's a good question. I think the best way to do this is to go on the Enve Melee product page on their website, read through what they say the bike is going to do and is for, and see if they're bullshitting us or if it's ticking the box. The Melee prioritizes efficiency and speed, with geometry and handling characteristics optimized for 27 to 32 millimeter tires. Yep, it can fit up to 35s. The Melee is a modern road race bike, correct? Engineered to provide the performance competitive riders demand. Yep. The Melee performs in all areas that count. Efficient power transmission, yes. Weight, we've been through that. Probably not. I don't think at this price range it's competitive weight-wise. Aerodynamics and versatility. Yep. Tire clearance, the mounts for the fenders and stuff. Sure. To achieve the versatility today's road races require, the Melee provides riders up to 35 millimeters of tire clearance. Yep. And then they go on about how it's optimized. It's the package. It's optimized to complement the SES wheel line. Okay. You wouldn't know unless you tested different wheels in the frame. I think that's kind of nonsense, personally. Features such as the integrated front end ensures the Melee is aerodynamically optimized as the wires and hoses are routed internally to be out of sight and out of the wind. The OEM frames are doing that now. I don't really think that's a feature in 2024. At Enve, we believe that you are only as fast as your fit allows, ensuring the majority of riders out there achieve their ideal fit and the intended ride experience. The Melee is offered in 7 frame sizes with 5 fork rakes. Yep.
That's a point of difference.
Yep.
Especially when compared to, the Trek, essentially. Yeah.
And it is less on the racy side. Like you look at the SL8 geometry, almost everyone runs spacers on it. And so Enve have just gone, well, we'll just give you a couple centimeter or two. And additionally, handlebar width, stem length, saddle, seat post setback are chosen a la carte. That would be true, but most of the websites when I looked up the price of this bike just are frame set, fork, seat post. They don't come with the stem and handlebar. So if you're just selling the frame only, that's kind of irrelevant. These options make Melee the most readily customizable fixed geometry race bike on the market. I don't think so. I think Factor. If you're talking mass-produced, I think ordering through Factor's website is the leader in that. But overall, there's no claims in there that are, I think that's pretty much bang on.
See, what's interesting, like what Enve will claim, right, is one of your takeaways being this increased level of comfort, compliance, etc., which, we looked at the geometry of it and we put a lot of that down to just purely the shapings of the bike. I'd say what Enve's marketing would love to tell you is that the material optimized design, or the MOD, Jesse, is what's actually doing that. And this is the secret sauce shit that the mainstream brands still can. It's like the card they play. It's the trump card they get to play that we can't really answer. It's the classic. We are carbon experts, artisans of our craft, using the best materials for the application and making the products that we want to ride. At Enve, we design to build to the strengths of carbon fiber. This means running continuous fibers, Jesse, throughout the frame and fork, tapering the laminate, and removing excess materials to save weight. Carbon fiber is layered and orientated to achieve zone-specific performance requirements like impact, toughness, stiffness, and compliance. MOD is giving you everything you need and nothing you don't to perform the rubber when the rubber hits the
Chris,
road.
I was trying to give them the benefit of the benefit of the doubt. I don't know, why did you have to scroll down here?
MOD, get that in there. What?
Now,
Beautiful.
This would hold water if it was still made in the US.
Mm.
This is made in China. It's a China bike.
Jeez, they love some MOD
They
in
don't
China.
make the Melee in the US. Their custom road chassis is made in the US. This is a Chinese bike. Maybe Taiwan at best. So,
But they've got to put this shit in.
yeah.
Because this is the stuff that Chris reads and goes, yeah, he's right.
Well, the China bike
cold
didn't.
forged.
Yeah.
Cold forged. And
But as a person, so my non-Nero Show usual take on that would be, I can't feel the difference in comfort. I feel like it can be explained mostly in part due to the changes in the frame design, not by some magic Enve carbon continuous layered thing that's made in China by a factory that they've licensed out to produce frame. Like, no, I don't feel like that. And all the things that they've described there, which is we optimize the layup to use different, like the OEMs do that. That's kind of, we know that now. That's not secret sauce. So, no, I think that's all strongly exaggerated rhetoric and not.
And the other one being, and they double down on this being the package idea, is that the frame is designed to work with the, what are they, the SES wheels, right? And it's the other secret sauce one that they all play. It's here, developed in C, blah, 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 has been tuned to complement Envy's SES rim shapes and deliver aerodynamic performance that is ready to go to battle. The fastest bikes on the road. Jeez, this must be fun to write.
Well, that could be true because if they've taken the frame into a wind tunnel or done their what's it called? The CFD thing, if that's done with a set of wheels and they've done it with Enve wheels the whole way along, then you would say, yeah, but it doesn't mean it's going to be slower than other settles. For all they know, it could be faster with a set of row valves. I mean, how the hell do they know? So that's kind of true, but also I wouldn't put too much weight into it. Well, I got more, Chris. We haven't gone into pricing yet. Let me keep going. Who's it for then? Who should use this? Firstly, if you ride a lot, this is good for you. If you're Rob Redpath, you're doing 25-hour weeks, you're just a big trainer, you will really appreciate the comfort increase because you spend more time on the bike. For me,
Too heavy for Rob.
potentially, I'm just someone that rides a lot, right? For me, who rides 6 to 8 hours a week, and most of that's like intense, I'm not doing long 5-hour club rides, that comfort to me is kind of pointless. I don't really benefit from it. I don't ride enough. Me training for nationals in 2022, 26-hour weeks, it would be a really good bike for me doing nationals 2 years ago.
Not fast enough.
Absolutely.
I'm just
I did it on a rim brake TCR.
Yeah, I know. I'm just pushing
not
back
fast
on
enough
these people.
potentially. There's an argument to make that, yeah, on race day, if I'm in the wind, however the race pans out, I'm losing. The training gain from just being more comfortable and enjoying the riding more for all those hours per week, you could make an argument that that's worth it as a net gain, even though on race day, aerodynamically is not quite as good. So yeah, if you ride a lot, you'd consider this. Next thing, if you race, so let's say you're someone that's looking at a Cervelo S5, but you're still kind of C grade level, your race speeds are generally 35, 36 kilometers an hour. You're not really seeing 50 kilometers an hour, zero yaw angle. Then you would start to look at something like this, where you go, well, those watt savings are not as significant for all of my total resistance. And so the comfort would start to come into play a bit more. And then the final thing would be for a newer rider who's not super confident cornering and descending, and you want something that feels more stable. Combine that with the comfort, again, all of these things come back to comfort, and with the SRAM derailleur with it's nice and quiet, the brakes that feel really good, it's not as twitchy. Yeah, I think it'd be compelling. Those are the three situations that I could come up with.
I think that third situation, we see a lot of this in Sydney, Jesse, and we get criticised for talking about them. But the people that jump in, who have not been riding that long, and they jump in on a dogma, as one of their first bikes, and lo and behold, it's a fucking stiff bike and really hard to ride. But they wanted, the froth of the dogma. Turns out it's really hard to ride for long hours on the weekend. This has the enviness about it. It's got that look. And you know what? It is going to actually be a performance advantage for that particular person, because come the third hour of their bunch ride, they're still going to have legs for the sprint to the bloody stop sign.
100%.
So I think that third person, for me, the other people you described it's a tough sell for them. For me, I think, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yep. Okay, price. Is it worth it? What's the value like? And this is where it falls apart in 2 minutes. Like when you start going value. Firstly, it's not made in the USA. It's very likely made in China, maybe Taiwan. And so, the price, which is $4,450 for frame, fork, seat post, this is not on another league compared to, for example, my Tavello, which is $1,650 without the handlebars. And so that's almost 3 times the price. And my opinion between the two bikes would be, it's not in another league. They're just designed for different things. That's my honest thing. That I don't feel like there's any magic Enve sauce here. It's just that it's well designed for what it's intending to do. And thankfully for us as consumers, I'm confident in saying that some of these other value options, of which I've only ridden one, which is that Tavello, blindfold me, it could be a different model from the same brand. It's not playing in a different category.
What about when you slate it against mainstream brands of a similar price?
Yeah, and so objectively, it's not good value. It's not worth the money. But not most people, a lot of people buying bikes in this category they don't give a crap about the value. It's how does it compare to the other bikes of this price? Compared to an SL8? Again, that's tough. SL8 is, I think the SL8 is up above, it's about $5,000 for the frame set for the S-Works version, which will be way lighter. Even the non-S-Works model is lighter and probably cheaper than this. It's not going to be as comfortable, but it'll be faster aerodynamically.
We'll just be going around in circles here, because then we'll be talking about, but that the SL8 might not be the right comfort for you, and then in the third hour, blah, 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 blah.
Yes, and so I'm not going to go too much further. Don't worry about the value. It's not good value. It's just a pointless conversation. I really enjoyed riding the bike. There are quite a few people I can think of which I would suggest test riding it if you've kind of gotten on with what I've said. And for what it's designed to do, which I do think is unique in this race bike space, what it's offering is unique. And so I think that is, for a lot of people will be worth it. It's definitely, been fun. The problem, and this is part of the hard sell, is what it's offering isn't very tangible. And so you kind of, we would probably be able to talk someone into it, but if you just rocked up at the shop, it's not as light, it's not as aero, which you can claim. It's not as light, and so it's just not as... It's a hard one to sell.
I mean, you're not going to like hearing this, but you've probably just sold a bucket load of Enves, because I haven't heard anything I certainly haven't heard 40 minutes of discussion about the Enve really breaking down what it's good at. I mean, we read the marketing stuff, and every now and again someone will bob into our DMs and say, oh, it is a smooth bike, but no one's actually really sat down and taken the time to do that to this extent. And maybe that's a shortcoming of Enve not getting the frame out there for this to happen. But I think you articulated what it's good at pretty well. If that's what you need.
And so I'm not going to be riding it anymore. I was getting a little bit of knee pain after a couple of rides. Potentially just due to, because I'm running different pedals on there because it already had a power mid. I'm not using 5 so perhaps it's because I'm using different look pedals. I don't want to take my chances and continue to ride it. And I already feel like I've kind of made up my mind on the bike. I feel like I've tested it pretty well, so I don't need to keep using it. So I will be dropping it back to Keish. And so, yeah, thanks to Alan from Keish for letting me ride it. Given that he just built it like 2 weeks ago, I felt kind of bad.
No, he didn't wax the chain.
The chain was waxed.
Oh, it was waxed.
Yeah, it was
Why
waxed.
is it black? Is that the
It's
special?
a black chain.
Oh, I don't like that.
Oh.
No, I don't like that look at all.
Yeah.
So it's just I just thought that was a super greasy
No, it's
train. Okay.
dead clean wax.
Right.
It's
Okay.
just, yeah, black.
Fair enough. I don't like that look then. No, that's not a thing for me. Black wax chains, out. All right, let us know down below, guys. If you have ridden the Melee, keep the conversation going because we probably won't talk about it again.
Can I just
for a
bring
long
up, what
time.
if you've ridden the Melee, the one thing that I can't quite wrap my head around is the steering thing. Is that just because the bike was maybe too small for me and I didn't really do it heaps of cornering on it, that I felt like it took more input to turn? Just for my own mental clarity, if you've ridden the Melee, let me know. Do you think the handling is more stable or more twitchy? I'm keen to see if people agree with me or if I've... That's the problem with you testing things like this is that's what I felt. Am I making this up? So yeah, let me know in the comments. This episode is supported by Peaks Challenge Falls Creek from Bicycle Network, Australia's most legendary cycling challenge. Taking place on March 9th next year, it's 235 kilometres of world-class cycling in Victoria's high country. The route clocks up over 4,000 metres of climbing by taking on Toowoomba Gap, Mount Hotham, and the notorious back of Falls Creek. It's the kind of elevation test you'd usually see in the biggest mountain stages of the Tour de France. But Chris, you've done it twice. What makes it so special?
Honestly, Jesse, there isn't one thing that makes this so special. It's the whole experience that makes it unique. Look, of course you have the massive physical challenge, but on top of that you have incredible alpine vistas, the camaraderie amongst entrants, the outstanding support from Bicycle Network team, and above everything else, this sense of achievement every single rider will feel when you make that left-hand turn at Falls Creek into the finish line. Now, keep in mind, Bicycle Network is there to get you to have the most rewarding day possible, with training options to make sure you've simply got the legs to finish it, and a team of wave leaders who ride the course at an appropriate pace to get you to the finish line in your goal time up to 13-hour cutoff.
Now, it's October 2024, and over 70% of the tickets have already sold, so it is going to sell out. So now's the time to commit to Peaks Challenge Falls Creek. Again, it's March 9th next year. You can enter at Bicycle Network or Peaks Challenge and take on the beast this Aussie summer.
The only excuse for not doing this is if you are Dan Vanderland, who's getting married on this exact day. Other than that, no excuse. Get yourself to this event. Big thanks to Bicycle Network, obviously, for supporting today's episode. News roundup time, Jesse.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah, let's start off with a fun one. I saw this popped up in the news. St. Piran UCI Continental Team caught riding Chinese frames with fake UCI approved stickers on it. I clicked this in 2 seconds. Yeah. This is brilliant. So it was originally reported by Cycling Weekly. What happened with the St. Piran team is they had a sponsorship agreement with Lapierre. That fell through. And then generally what would happen is as part of the rider contracts, it will say the team will provide a bike for the year and so on and so forth. And then so the team is probably in this awkward position where they have to have bikes for the riders to ride because it's part of their contract. But the sponsorship's fallen through. So what did they do? They've gone to Light Carbon OEM, as reported by not Cycling Weekly, Cycling News, found that it was the LCR 0XD OEM frame from Light Carbon. I think Light Carbon have sent them just generic UCI approved stickers that don't have the specific number on them because this frame isn't UCI approved, and they've just stuck them on there, and off you go and race, and you're good for gold.
I find it difficult to be critical of a team in this sort of circumstance because I get the feeling no one's making millions of bucks out of this, and it's just got to try and get it done situation. I know there's a whole other thing about certain like unpaid staff and wages, which again I don't particularly want to go into.
No,
but it's kind of funny to be brutally honest. And as far as oh shit, we need to sort something out. What's a good idea? That's off. Well done. Had a crack. Fair enough.
No, it didn't work.
Yep.
I'm hoping the punishment is just please don't do that again. We don't need a Conti team getting fines for something like this. Just because it's not UCI approved, does it really matter? I mean, come on. I just find it strange that what I thought would have happened would be go, guys, sorry, the sponsorship's fallen through. We're not going to be able to provide bikes this year. Just ride what you've got at home. I probably would have said that would have been a better approach than buying OEM frames. I just don't get the point of doing that to begin with. I think there's nothing wrong with, okay, you won't have matching bikes, but you go, it's all right. Like, didn't come through this year. Still get to go to races. It's just a weird solution, I think.
I think a lot of the time it just comes from the DS and the managers kind of trying to portray like fake importance of the team. Do you know that sort of thing of, I actually don't think riders care that much, that they'd sort of happily ride their own bikes or whatever, but
most of them have bikes too. It's not like they're bikeless.
But there's that frothy, stupid thing of like managers wanting to turn up with all the bikes matching on top of the car, which, don't get me wrong, we did it. It looks cool. It's great, but it is fake because you're portraying this, look how pro and professional we are. Oh, by the way, my mum drove me to the start line because no one else is here. Like, that's the reality of racing.
Yep.
And to be portraying something else is kind of fake. I know it still happens here, but yeah, I agree. I just hope it's not some stupid big fine that actually causes them problems. Next up, we had a bit of a disaster in New South Wales in Australia this week in the world of road cycling. One of the largest mass participation events, the Bowral Classic, was cancelled the morning of the event.
Yep.
Do you want to maybe just give a little bit of what we've heard about this so far?
Yeah, so basically riders that were either staying there or driving down a couple of hours before get this text message. Ride cancelled. Due to lack of traffic controllers, the event's no longer able to be held. It's totally cancelled. That's it. It's just cancelled. So, and this is two hours before the start time. So for people that were staying there, they get up and see this text message. And by cancelled, I mean there's no start barrier. There's nothing in the feed zones. Like, purely cancelled, gone.
To set the scene on this is not like in a major area. People have travelled to this event, which I'm sure people are super familiar with. Most road cycling Fondo-y type event is a travel away. And we've all set the alarm for first thing in the morning to get up before the ungodly hour that this particular event is going to start. And to see that, the gut-wrenching feeling of it was, I can only imagine, pretty bloody devastating.
Yeah, and then it was rumors were flowing of like, how is it possible? It is only 2 hours before the event start time that the organizers go, oh, there's no traffic controllers here. So for those that aren't aware, like, why is traffic control important at an event like this? You've got the event organizers which run the event. They're in the feed zones. They have one or two cars that follow. The most of the legwork in terms of running the event between the start and the finish is done by, firstly, New South Wales Police, who have police motorbikes following groups. They have at some of the they have a few cars as well in there. So they're kind of not really closing the roads, but sort of supervising the whole operation. So you might have at a Bowral Classic 4 highway patrol cars and maybe 6 motorbikes, roughly, from memory. Then on most of the legwork to actually keep the roads closed, stop cars at the intersections and things like that is all done by traffic control. I think they said there was 100 traffic control people that were there to turn up, of which none arrived the morning of.
I want to get into this chat at some sort, but I did reach out to some of the, I'm doing Dirty Warney, which, yes, is a gravel event, but I reached out to the organisers of that and asked them for some of the specifics about the kind of breakdown of their expenses. And in 2024, their traffic management expense has gone up, has increased 80%. Traffic management is now the largest expense that any event promoter has to put an event on, and that is in Victoria, and which is notoriously easier. Like New South Wales and Queensland are meant to be the worst states to do this, and that's seen an 80% increase in Victoria. So you can only imagine what that's seen here. So to have them fuck you up, the greatest expense, the ones that are just siphoning off the biggest amount, that's a kick in the balls.
I mean, I got a lot of chat I want to get into it about this in particular, but just to do it a little bit more housekeeping. So whose fault was it? Because you're starting to go, when it first came out, oh, did they not pay their invoices and then so they didn't show up? Was it some sort of protest? No. Like Altus Group, who was the company that was organizing it, says, it was an indefensible error that has negatively impacted a large number of people, for which we are profoundly sorry. We got the date wrong. We thought it was the next weekend. Now, when you have a big event like this, you have to submit a traffic management plan to council, and even that had the correct date on it. They had signs set up on the course alerting people to motorists to the fact that there was going to be an event on Sunday. You know, the sign, event Sunday, East Road closed. So it's almost insane how that's possible. I think the only thing I could come up with would be potentially if the actual rostering of the staff on the day is done on some separate system, in which case the thing that says Tommy from Sydney needs to be here on Sunday morning, if that's all booked in one separate system, siloed off from all the other things, I could kind of see how you might not realize if it's just one person that actually does the rostering, perhaps that's how it's happened.
What I've heard, then this is proper bubble chat, is that the general manager or the person in charge of rostering went on a honeymoon, and scheduled this in advance, and you're dead right, scheduled it for the 27th of October in the internal rostering plans. Even though you go to Atlas, their website, they actually list the Bowral Classic 2024 on the correct date on their own website.
But I could see how all the people working on that would have known that, and just the one person that links to the rostering has cooked it up. Just on, I want to, because the ride for most of the people that did it, I coached quite a few, still went ahead, and I want to chat about that. But just on this sort of what happens with the event now, they have to refund all the entry fees. I heard that they still ran the post-event village with all the stalls and the food vendors and things, and I heard that they were handing out food for free to try and sort of make up for it. So I feel bad for some of the food vendors. Maybe the event's going to reimburse them. You would like to think that there is insurance from the Altus management company that Bowral can then sue them or make a claim for some sort of professional liability, something along those lines. Given that this was just seemingly a big mistake, I would like to think that if they can recover the cost that they've lost, that the event can still run next year. I'm hopeful. This would be a massive loss if Bowral are out hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe it's probably not in the millions. If they're out hundreds of thousands of dollars, that could potentially be it. They may never be able to recover the cost to keep it.
There's that, and also the question of the impact psychologically on the riders. Will riders sign up again?
Yep,
next year.
100%.
That's the sort of question I have. All right, so I think that's the next question: is will riders want to do this again next year?
And also, did anyone still ride it?
Did anyone still ride it? Well, we have someone. We didn't bother going down, Jesse, but someone who did. Alex.
Hello.
Your thoughts, you were down there. Do you want to just maybe run us through how this played out from your perspective? You get the text.
Yeah.
What kind of happens from there?
So we got the text and there was a bit of rage in the household. So, we're all a little bit upset. But then once that passed, we were like, well, we're down here. We're going to press on. So sent a few group messages around to see, got everybody to meet up at around 6 o'clock, like 6:10, when we were meant to roll out. So we turn up at the start line, and there's quite a few people all just mingling around. There's no real organization. Matt Wells did jump up on the wall, like one of the organizers, and mentioned that the race had been cancelled. There was no traffic management, no signage, and no support on the roads, which everybody kind of expected. But Maybe 5-10 minutes later, we had, a couple of like a good group of Highlanders, so maybe 30-40 people ready to go. So we all just started rolling out, and we had a copper on a moto with us. So he kind of led the way. We all did, as a collective group, miss the first major turn going down a very fast hill. We all had to do a bit of a U-banger, turn back around, go along the correct road. And then we did get a bit of a breakaway going. And with that, the cop actually stayed with us for the whole time.
So when that first guy got up at the very beginning and said, okay, there's no traffic management, et cetera, did he say anything along the lines of, like, you can't go out and ride the roads now, or how did it?
Not at
What was,
all.
like, the
There
message?
was no message of don't go out and ride. It's just you're out there, you're on your own. There's just not going to be the traffic management. So there's still open roads. Please keep two abreast. And even we were there, people were still just pottering and rolling off. So there was no real collective start. I think the whole time we were riding, there were always riders on the road, and everybody looked like they were still pushing on. So once I got back to the finishing village, they everything was still set up. They were offering free food and drink, which was really good. And then once more people rolled in, it still had that vibe of when you finished a Fondo, like everybody's super pumped, they're excited. And by that stage, we'd forgotten about the whole debacle. I think if the course wasn't so confusing with the turns and maybe crossing over on itself, it could have been easier, because a few other people I've spoken to who left a little bit later, same thing, like if they'd left some of the sign, they took all the signage off as well. So the morning of, there was no signage on the road, but the night before it was there. It could have maybe helped a little bit, but of course, once they said they'd cancelled the event, they probably didn't want to have signage out in case of liabilities or anything. But even the other guys that I spoke to, they said they had a ball, even though they weren't with us first Highlander group. They rolled out 15 minutes later and still had an epic chop off.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I spoke to some of the riders I coached that were doing it, and in some of their reports, okay, the first sentence was, the ride was cancelled. That was unfortunate. But carrying on, I did this speed and I felt good, and this is how it played out, and it was basically as if you wouldn't have even really known it was actually cancelled, because everyone still went out, and the spirit of Fondo was still alive, and it was just like, oh well, it was cancelled, but it all kind of still went ahead.
Yeah. I had just as much fun whether we had a number pinned on or not. And I think as well, like, it almost took the pressure off, because you're not turning up so stressed that you might want to be going for this result or this time. Like, you're still just out there riding, you're still pushing on, but there's not just that added pressure of everybody riding so aggressively, and probably made it even a little bit safer that we weren't all some of the guys were trying to race.
So do you think, was there any chat of, I'm not signing up for this next year because of this momentous stuff up?
No.
Or was it no? Okay,
I think it'd
so
just
most
be a
people
one-off.
accepted this as a all right.
Yeah. In all, like, it was still a fun weekend. Like, part of me thinks they knew about this earlier, but if they'd sent this message the night before or any earlier, people wouldn't have turned up. Whereas you get the message an hour before, you've got no real choice. You're down there, you're still going to push on, and you're going to have a good time. Like, people weren't at the end all upset and pissed off. They were, very same jovial, happy they'd done the ride, still punched out the kilometers they wanted to, had a good time.
In terms of numbers, so I was on the Strava segment on
You're doing a Strava
Sunday.
stalk, Jesse?
That's where I live.
Good man.
Just because I was curious
How
how many people rode it.
Yeah.
So on the Oxley climb, which all the routes do, even the shorter ones, there was, as of now, if I filter by this month, and it's pretty much only people that did the ride because no one really trains on it, 742 people rode it.
Okay.
And that's people that uploaded to Strava. So there'd be a whole other bunch that are on private or haven't uploaded.
On Komoot.
You'd probably, on Komoot, yes. So I'd probably safely say that there was probably 1,000 people that rode the course on the day.
How many were there last year? Do you have that as a reference?
I can't see that as a reference. I think roughly they have 3,000 entries as a total. So, I mean, it appears from my rough note-taking that about a third of the people still rode it.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
But I couldn't
Alrighty,
believe that people wouldn't just turn up and go for a pedal anyway, or give it a
Yeah.
go. So
Yeah. And especially the weather was pretty good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there wasn't too many issues. All righty, mate. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Congratulations on being the first ever dialing guest to the Nero Show. There you go. Who would have
Perfect.
thought?
All right.
All righty, mate.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Ciao. My only wrap up to that, Jesse,
Mm-hmm.
the spirit of gravel is dead, but the spirit of fondos, that's going to take over.
I was so proud.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, all you people can be sooking around and don't do it. No, get out and ride it and come back next year.
Yep.
I think that's so sick.
Yep.
Love it.
Totally agree. And yes, we'll kind of follow it up when maybe a little bit more information comes out about it in the next couple of weeks. But well done to everyone who got out and did the course, and hopefully 2025. All right, subscriber questions, Jesse Coyle. I want you to play your one first. They're strength training ones, and then I'll read out the second one.
Yep.
Hey Jesse, hey Chris. Congratulations on the potty. I've been following you from when you had the race team back in the day, well before this, so congratulations on your success. After a couple of years of not having a lot of cycling after a bit of a burnout, I'm getting back into it with preparation for 3 Peaks in 25. I noticed Chris does a lot of leg work, at least once a week, and I was wondering if I could get some advice, Chris, on how does it affect your training? Should you do it early in the week, late in the week? Maybe that's a question for Jesse. But do you find that it affects your training too much, and would you incorporate it coming up to 3 Peaks? Thanks, guys.
I've actually got a short answer to that, and it's watch the video you did with Dan, who's the other, Dan started Nero Coaching. That's basically the only video you need to watch about strength training for cycling that answers that specific question. Just watch that video.
What to do, when to fit it in. Second one is, do you think your strength training and packing on more muscle has led to a surge of wins? Or have you always won races but just started to post about them? I didn't read that bit. That's good. I'm up 3 kilos this year with eating more and strength training. Never felt better on the bike. Your videos about counting calories and losing too much weight during COVID really helped me to stop doing the same. Okay. Cool. First thing I want to say is, I don't know about you, Jesse, but it's like strength training at the moment in the cycling. It's the catnip. It's the cocaine for friggin' cycling YouTube at the moment. And so anytime I talk about it, I do very much want to temper it by saying it's not some absolute holy grail solution that I feel like the trainer road crowd wants you to believe it is. It is like anything. It's a consistency. It's a part of a pie. All that sort of stuff.
Yep. Can you? I want you to answer it because I've got other thoughts that they might fall into what you say about it. Because like on surface level, I train weights, I put on muscle mass, which is predominantly fast twitch muscle. How the hell does that help me ride faster for an hour? Like, just on a surface level, it doesn't really make sense. There are some of the endurance adaptations that can come from the strength training, but they're relatively small. But anecdotally, a lot of people will say, hey, I put on muscle, my aerobic power went up, and I'm stronger than ever. Which, just logically, on terms of, well, what type of muscle mass is strength training increase? Doesn't necessarily link up. So I'm curious to, let's work through what your experience has been.
So much of this is individual
Mm-hmm.
and comes from the specific circumstance that I found myself in that this guy referenced, which was essentially an eating disorder and basically being tanking my iron and doing that. So basically becoming way too skinny and losing a lot of that muscle mass, which of course then had knock-on effects on the bike. I lost a whole heap of power that I once had in a space of, it took a long time, it was a slow sort of decline. But I will also temper that by saying the racing that I was doing at the time almost called for that, Jesse. Like, I was racing 4 or 5 hour stage races and the type of rider that I turned myself into was the person who could get to the end of those races, and especially if they were hard and hilly, I would be there. And I decided that that was the type of rider that the person that I decided that physiologically that type of rider needed to be super skinny.
Now, that wasn't necessarily a bad decision at the time because you are racing in the elite category and you're not going to out sprint someone on a 1 minute climb or in an actual sprint or getting a breakaway and outpower them. Your best shot to move up the result sheet was
just be there.
What's my watts per kilo for maybe 10 minutes in a relatively hard stage, and you could jag a top 15. That was your avenue for results. So at the time, it made sense.
But this was always, and the turning point for me was when obviously I stopped doing that and I went back to do the racing, because I'm obsessed with racing, and went back to do the racing that I was now going to be able to do, Masters racing. That's not what those races were or are. They're very, very different. And I was irrelevant, basically. My power profile, the person that I was at the time, was a completely irrelevant person in those races. I could still be there, but what good is that in a Masters race?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. So I just wanted to say that from the perspective of what I have, quote unquote, turned myself into now is someone who is designed to try and be more competitive in the racing that I'm doing now. I don't regret, I mean, I do regret tanking my iron levels, but
Yes.
that's different.
Yep.
But I don't regret trying to be the rider that I was 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to say that. So the answer to your question is yes. The strength training and putting on muscle has been the key to unlock my recent quote unquote run of results, because I have managed to add what was already a pretty good cardiovascular fitness, and I put some weight on that has been able to bump up my shorter power efforts. And the biggest thing that I have found has been that the additional weight has allowed me to be more resilient, just overall. And that resilience is not something that you see after a week or 2 weeks. It's just resilience that has allowed me to train harder for longer.
Resilience in terms of like your fatigue resistance on a ride, or resilience in terms of I can do 800 TSS a week on repeat?
The second.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah. So putting on additional muscle has actually increased my FTP, but it's kind of it's a result of lots of other things changing along the same line.
It's a tough one because I don't think it's fair to say that in isolation, because so many things have changed. And this is one of the things that generally happens with strength training is it is a bit of a mindset shift. If you're someone that only rides and only does cycling, generally it's a bit of a process of reduction. It's like, I need to do a little bit more training. I need to be a little bit lighter. And you're kind of going down this path of how can I lose aero drag? How can I lose weight in order to go faster? A strength training mindset is really the opposite. It's how can I get stronger? How can I recover from this session? It feels more additive. And so a lot of people that start doing strength training realize, if I want to be strong in the gym, I need to eat more. I'm going to need to put on muscle mass. And then that mindset shift, the hormonal change that comes along with that, combined then in the aerobic training as part of that rider who has an additive mindset as opposed to this sort of reductionist guy that only cycles.
That's a great point.
I feel like a lot of the examples of people I've spoken to that do it and riders that I've gotten to do it, it's that mindset shift that causes it. Because if you could somehow in some magical experiment just take you 5 years ago and just inject 3 kilograms of muscle mass, it doesn't work. Yeah. It's the package. It's the system. It's the package.
That's such a good way of describing it. And I can only describe the mental outcome of that being, I was at a point like wearing extra small gear was like a tattoo. It was like part of me, or I would have felt at some point in my life. Like, I'm an extra small. That's what I got. But now I'm potentially excited about one day fitting into a medium pair of bibs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a total different mind shift.
Mm.
And I'm not saying like full slop spec,
Yeah.
just going to get a massive beer gut and that's how I'm going to fit into it. Like, if I could have the quads to fit into I'm not saying that's great for everyone, but it's a total mindset shift for myself. That's part of the puzzle. And again, anything with like the cycling stuff just comes back to consistency and things that are happening off the bike. Like, for example, 5-6 years ago, my kids were 3, 4, 5 years old. That's a very different lifestyle with children at that age than at 9 and 10, because it's much better to be, as you're no doubt finding out, like an infant child is a lot harder to look after, time-wise, stress-wise. You just can't have as much consistency. You can't commit to a ride tomorrow morning. You don't know what the night's going to be like. I know exactly how the night's going to be. I'll be there if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just the culmination of a lot of that over time that's formed that consistency.
Mm.
Um,
So that question, do you think your strength training and packing on more muscle has led to the surge of wins? From someone outside, I'd actually say no. I'd say it's part of it. But to simplify it down to a question like that isn't really giving respect to the number of changes you've made. And I think that's a case for a lot of riders that incorporate strength training. Because when you start strength training, as I said, you're doing it because you want to put on a bit of muscle. So it changes everything. So, yeah, I think, and you've had such a big increase across the board that like even the increases you're getting in research related to strength training, even though it's over a shorter time period, aren't to that degree when you're comparing between groups that do and don't do strength training. So I don't think being that reductionist is
yes, but I just can't stress about how much what I was as a person and that being so individual. Like, I do think what I was is quite unique in the sense that a late 30-year-old who was trying to be a UCI level elite like rider, that's a pretty niche inside a niche inside a niche. And so to have then been able to and run the team and do all that shit, and then to actually like step away from that and concentrate on your own body. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but for me, the strength training is more about what it says about what I want to be than the actual physiological gains of it. That makes sense?
Yeah, yep.
Like the fact that I just go to the gym twice a week, that's what I do. That's Chris as a 40-year-old. I want to do that.
Yes. Okay.
And I want to see gains in the gym. Like I don't, it's not like an FTP test where I would get as excited, but if I can put an extra, couple of pounds on a squat, I'm fucking stoked.
Yeah.
Like I'm happy with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yes. But it's not for everyone.
I'd love to do a deep dive into the actual like mechanics of it.
In terms of
like you do strength training. Okay, you put on 2 kilos of muscle mass. If you're only seeing hypertrophy in the fast twitch fibers, you can store a bit more glycogen. Most of the other adaptations you're getting have almost nothing to do with aerobic exercise. So just black and white on paper, that shouldn't increase your aerobic power. And so like the
way, okay, sorry, go on.
And so actually like digging down into, and there's not that much research on this. Like it is very convoluted because generally people that have seen these big swings in fitness, like who is the pro? Jonas Abrahamson, gains 20 kilos, does strength training, eats more. And then it's like pretty easy to go, oh, he's gotten fitter because he's done strength training. It's like it's a whole package. I'd really
I do think the hormonal thing is massive.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's massive. I mean, we talked about it in the past about like the testosterone stuff. Like I look at myself 6 years ago. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure everything was tanked off the table.
Hmm.
Whereas now, what am I doing? I'm sleeping way more,
Mhm.
I'm eating way more, and I'm doing strength training.
Mhm.
Well, what are the 3 things that they suggest to increase your testosterone?
Mm.
Pretty much those 3 things.
Mhm.
So again, this is probably someone who was coming from I kind of know it was pretty tanked out levels.
Mhm.
It's I just can't. That's where I think, yeah, the muscle mass element is definitely there, but I do think the hormonal impacts
Mhm.
have got to be significant
Yeah.
at my age.
Interesting. Yeah.
The only quick specific thing I will say, I've talked a bit about my routine in the past, and where I was very much like, I would go to the gym on my rest day. I have managed in the last 6 months to change that, where I will go to the gym. So on a Thursday, I will ride in the morning,
Mhm.
and in the evening, before I pick the kids up from school, I will go to the gym and do my session there. So I will completely splat myself on Thursdays. Friday, completely off.
Mhm.
And I do the same normally either on Sunday, so doing the Sunday double session with a Monday off, or that might be Tuesday with a Wednesday off, depending.
Nice. Yep.
But yeah, that's
You felt a significant change when you moved that around, just shifted that sort of 12 hours earlier?
I don't want to just backtrack on everything that I've just said, but I reckon I've actually seen a bump in fitness with that.
Okay.
Legitimately.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's been nice.
That's weird.
It's been nice. I just had a few little YouTube bits before we go.
Well, we got a few, do we? Very nice. Can I just do a quick shout out as we come towards the end of the episode? A couple more topics. The kit still in stock. We've got gilets, the Nero suits in stock, and the Nero suit in the dark edition still in stock. I think the medium sold out, but most of the other sizes are still in stock. That is one of the best ways to support us. Buy the kit. Profits come directly to us. So, check out the link on our YouTube and read the reviews. And if you feel like shopping with us, thanks.
Leave a 5-star review?
Yes.
Is that a thing you can do? It
You
is.
can leave 5-star reviews.
Oh,
leave
cool.
your height and weight if you feel free sharing, and help the others with their sizing. Yes. Thank you.
Is it a kit brand's responsibility to manage their activation rights?
Yes.
This popped up on my feed the other week. The What Life YouTube channel is a UK cycling vlogger, and he's in Mallorca. And it was, why does no one like Paz? Normal. And I was intrigued, and I checked it out. And essentially, he goes on a Panormal ride in Mallorca, and he gets dropped. And then he just has a big sook about the fact that he gets
no.
dropped, and that therefore Panormal are not a very inclusive brand, and he doesn't align with them because the ride was too fast, etc., etc., etc. I'm not for or against this. I just don't really know where I stand on a brand's responsibility here.
Well, the devil's in the detail, I think, with a lot of this. I mean, if it's a drop ride and it's advertised as a drop ride, then, yeah, all bets are off. You'd be expecting attacks. You'd be expecting surges on every climb, sending attacks on downhills. Anything goes, really. But if it's anything other than that, I think it should be, controlled by the brand. And I don't know what the premise of this ride organised by Panormal is.
Well, he went there fully aware that the expectation of this ride is it's full gas, and it has a reputation thus. And so when he then gets dropped from it, I just found it interesting that he then sort of links that. I mean, I couldn't care less as far as like in terms of getting dropped, not getting dropped, but the fact that reflects badly on the brand, and then somehow that the brand is elitist because the fast-paced group ride is too fast. Maybe there is some truth in that. Maybe if you are rolling out from the actual brand store, you're then obligated to, I mean, these are all potential customers. But then the other kind of part of me is like, well, do the people just want full gas and hang on till you can't? Because there's a thing there as well of like, okay, you're turning up with essentially pros. Just hang on for as long as you can. And that's almost the challenge in itself. I don't know, I find it's a little soft. We're all a little bit in this cycling world scared to be, I don't know, like harsh on each other. Like, or it all just has to be inclusive all the time. Does it always have to be inclusive all the time?
No, it doesn't. I can't see generally the brand, the activation rides aren't fast.
No, that's what I mean. This is almost like a point of difference for it.
Right. I mean, it's a drop ride.
It's a drop ride.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I was actually just reading the video description, and he does kind of go out of his way to say, look, this was super well briefed. Everyone knew exactly what they were in for. I don't know. I kind of like bringing these things up because I feel like a lot of the time on cycling YouTube, it's easy to kind of pander to a lot of this stuff and play we have to be inclusive card. I just like asking the question every now and again, whether, you know, it is sometimes okay for there to be these sort of things that exist that are just fucking hard and they're not for everyone. That's okay. That can be okay. And personally, the reason I say that is like, I just don't think that reflects badly on the brand unless it is everyone come to Par Normal. We're going to do this 70K ride, fun for everyone, baskets on your bikes, all good. This was
I'm more surprised that Par Normal have fast riders. I thought they were all Instagram people that rode twice a week.
This blew my mind as well.
That's fair play.
I do think there is a genuine difference between the Par Normal marketing stuff in Europe than there is in Australia. Here, it's just a pure fashion brand, absolute fashion brand. But there, I think there's like legit like privateer teams that are, especially in the gravel scene, like it's a massive privateer team spec. The Girona bubble are just like overflowing with it. All the good boys are on the Par Normal stuff, boys and girls over there. So yeah, there's a bit of difference supposedly in the marketing directions.
I think it's cool. When those like kind of mythical group rides, like when you first get in, this Kalutsi, they go on a Saturday race through the national park. You're like, what is this? And then you go out on the ride and you see the big pack and they're going super fast. You go, who are these people? And that's like a cool part of the sport. It's good.
There's nothing wrong with going on a group ride and being shouted at every now and again. You know, sometimes maybe we just got to bring hazing back. We've got to bring back a little bit of, because there was always the guy in the group ride, why are you fucking rolling the wrong way? Fucking put your hands on the bars. Yeah. Now.
But they only give out to the new people. Once you've been there long enough, you're good.
You've been shouted at.
Yeah, you're totally hazed.
Now it's like, I mean, I feel this person, I would never say anything to anybody. I'm too scared. Like, it just feels like we're all a little bit too nice to each other. In fact, I was having this chat with Cam when he was up, and he remembers a few of his early hell rides that he goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, well, so-and-so, insert Melbourne name here that I don't know, would like rip you and tell you you're rolling the wrong way, like you're surging through too hard, all that stuff. And then, a month later, he kind of got it. And some of the group rides up there, no one's saying anything to anybody. And I can tell you, it's a shit show, many of them, but no one wants to give out to each other anymore. So I don't know. I think maybe bring back a little bit of hazing.
Not on a club ride.
No.
Time and a place.
Time and a place.
But it needs to fit like it needs to fit what the ride is. Like if you're on a PAS ride and they're chain gang at 50k an hour, there's no time for pleasantries. Like at that speed, at that sort of thing. Now it's not. I never mouth off at people. It's not my thing. I don't like it. But Oh, what, have you heard me like
No, I'm
shout
thinking
at
about
someone?
myself.
No, all right.
I might have.
But if someone else does it in the bunch, I don't feel like it's a problem. Like it's an extreme thing you're doing in the first place. If someone shouts at you and you get offended, like you probably shouldn't be in a bunch swapping turns at 50k an hour. So that's what I think.
Well, I mean, Tommy, cycling to us, came and did the chop here. And the first thing he said to me was like, oh, everyone's pretty, like, rude. I'm like, what? They're not there to chat, mate. Like, it's full gas. I have probably, the majority of the people in that group, I probably said 6 words to in my life. But I know most of them. But it's literally just in, up.
But there's the usual suspect. If someone's shouting, I know that there's probably 3 people. It'd be one of them. There's like the notorious guy that shouts at people.
It's normally an older person like me who's kind of a bit more on the rivet. I do find myself, like, if you are more on the rivet, you're more inclined to be mouthy because you're already just hanging on. And so any little additional surge or change to the system, I know I do it. It's like, oh, whereas, like, if you're just nose breathing like you, it's normally like, oh, I don't care. I'll just weld that back, whatever.
Is it a good thing though? Because I've coached rides before, and they'll join the group ride, and they go through this exact same thing. They go, oh, this guy was shouting at me, blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're just a dickhead. They shout at everyone. It just is what it is. You just got to put up with it and get better, get stronger, and they'll stop shouting at you. But is that a problem? Are we just excusing it because we're old Luddites that are rusted on a bit around?
No, I don't think. Well, I mean, I've said
Are
it.
there people at run clubs shouting at the other run clubbers because they're
but
too slow?
you're not bar to bar at 50 k's an hour. Like the consequences are far less at run club.
It's true.
Like I'm TikToking half the time. Like I don't need to worry about being chopped. My concern is the person who is doing the shouting potentially actually doesn't have enough experience to be doing the shouting in the first place. Would be my possible concern there. Maybe there needs to be some sort of verification to be the sort of head hazer of your group. You need to be verified by a subsidiary of the UCI who, enforces certain things that are held correctly in road cycling. I mean, I still roll the wrong way certain times when the wind changes direction, or
roll right, you dickhead.
Sorry, yeah, okay, but I don't know. Bring back hazing. We're all too soft. Congratulations to New Zealand, won the America's Cup, Jesse. There you go. So
well done
for a little island. Can I just say, it's bloody amazing. So they win that. They're obviously the All Blacks. Their Olympic campaign was friggin' nuts. They grabbed I think they got a few golds in the rowing, and had some medals in the athletics. Like there's 3 million of them. It's actually pretty nuts. Well done, New Zealand. You've got professional cyclists out the door.
5.2 million.
5.2 million. What was their medal count? Can you bring that up, producer?
20.
They won 20 medals.
10 golds.
10 gold medals. That's actually amazing.
Yeah.
That is so impressive. Well done, Kiwis. Sadly, though, I've talked about this before, but New Zealand Cycle Classic, dead.
Gone.
Yeah. Unfortunate.
Oh, Tour of Southland's on next weekend.
Yep.
The big one. The fifth
Same
Grand
joke
Tour.
again. 5th Grand Tour. There we go. They wheeled out that joke. Congratulations. All right. I wonder if Cycling Tom's got a team this year in that red and white kit.
Oh, yeah.
The
Couplands.
Couplands.
Mm-hmm.
Be watching. Hopefully they do the recaps. Oh, I reckon we do. If they're doing the YouTube stage reviews next week, we do a segment, Southland.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
In.
Yep.
Until that people will be they're hitting subscribe right now.
Yeah.
It's just Southland. Get me on that chat.
You know what? Your channel needs to hit 100,000 subscribers.
We're going
It's only on
backwards at this
50.
stage.
It's only on 57. You know why it's important is because you can't verify your YouTube channel until you get 100,000. And I've noticed in my YouTube feed, homepage, and the recommended feed, the vast majority of the videos I'm going to recommend are from verified channels. And so I think we're losing reach because Chris Miller isn't verified because he's got the subscriber count of a
It's true.
degrader.
It's true. Maybe we just start a different. No, I won't start that chat here, and people won't actually subscribe. We could start a different channel, Nero Show channel. Probably catch this one pretty quickly.
Probably would.
It's ever since we started doing this, the subscription number, like the views are just through the roof.
No
But
one
like the
subscribes.
subscription numbers, just like, I can't be fucked.
It's actually sold out. I was going to say ask for subscribers, but you need 43,000 more subscribers. It's not like you can't beg your way to 100K, unfortunately.
But you get Amy's Gran Fondo race reviews as well on this channel.
Oh, there's plenty.
Can I do
to-
a self-plug? Of course I can.
Plenty.
It's my channel. I can do
Yeah.
whatever I want. Yeah,
Do what you want.
self-promotion for that video.
Mhm.
Go watch it because I don't know. Oh, that was all right.
That was good.
You're in it.
It's doing quite well.
It is. Oh,
People
good.
interested. Good positive feedback. Not like the shit show we usually have in the comments
know.
over here.
I know.
No, it's good. I liked it.
Yeah, I need to be able to run a rear camera though. That's I find with the bike camera footage, it just would add so much because when I was able to flick back to use fresh crits of Melbourne's footage of like what's going on at that time, it gives such better context.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
then what am I going to do? Run two cameras and like then you're like directing that and also trying to get a result at a bike race?
Too hard.
Too hard. Built-in cameras in my bike. That's what I want. Cervelo, whenever you launch a new bike, just in the down tube and the headset, just a little built-in.
It's like the Homer Simpson car. Just whatever features Chris wants. Just put
Put them in
them in.
with my tyre pressure gauge. All I want. With that in mind, see you next week for a Halloween episode, Jesse Coyle.
Oh, spooky.
Halloween episode. All right. Talk to you then.
See you then.